Hello, and welcome to another edition of Your Therapist Needs Therapy, the podcast where sometimes two, three, four, just one therapists talk about their mental health journey and how they navigate mental wellness while working in the mental health field. I'm your host, Jeremy Schumacher. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. Today's a solo episode because sometimes when you're hosting a podcast and you're talking about controversial things, you don't invite guests on because, some people don't want to be involved in controversy. I don't want to be involved in controversy. I just detest poor media literacy and status quo hot takes. So we're going to talk about some therapy drama. We're going to talk about rape culture in America. So if that's a trigger for you, take care of yourself, please. And don't listen. There's nothing of surprise at the end of this episode. So yeah, let's build some context. CNN published a report recently that the internet sort of took and ran with, I think in an unhelpful way, and not in that reactionary way where everyone's supposed to have the quote unquote correct opinion if you're a leftist, and anybody who isn't doing that is failing some sort of purity test. And also a bunch of people, in trying to provide nuance, ended up defending abusers, and that's not okay. Like, that's not a purity test thing. That's just like, don't do that. Therapy Jeff, who is a pretty big online therapy resource content creator, I don't know what you call these people, posted something that landed very poorly. I would say it was worded poorly. He handled it poorly. At time of me recording this episode, he hasn't clarified anything or apologized for his lack of clarity. And yes, it's not great. So for context, I guess I'll start with the CNN article. The CNN article was a larger report. Two of their reporters were sort of tracking this story down of men who were married or in committed relationships using date rape drugs or sleep-inducing drugs to rape their wives, film it for content, and post it online. Which is terrible, right? That's gross, that's disgusting, that's horrific. There is no excuse for that. It is criminal and should be prosecuted. And the stories that are cited in the CNN report, an update to their story, have been prosecuted. So that is a good thing. The trauma and the betrayal of trust and just the violence enacted against these women is going to be a thing that is an ongoing healing process and is deeply fucked up, right? There's no, just because men go to jail doesn't mean like, woohoo, problem solved, right? And so the reporting was pretty good. Honestly, I'd seen memes and I'd seen hot takes and I'd seen reactions on Instagram, on Threads. I try and stay off Threads because, gosh, that site is way more conspiratorial than the other spaces I spend time on online. And if Twitter is worse than that, or that's what Twitter was, I'm glad I never spent time on Twitter. But a lot of what I had seen was 62 million users of an online rape academy. And that's not what the CNN report said. And I'm not somebody who's going to push my glasses up here and be like, well, actually, the amount of men enacting violence on women is higher than 62 million, right? It doesn't matter what number we put on it. For purposes of clarity and because I'm autistic, like, I want to say, here's what the report actually said, because I think using data and reporting on things correctly matters. And it doesn't matter what number we put on it. There is no statistic that is going to clarify the amount of violence that men enact on women that ever summarizes it, because so much goes unreported. The amount of violence that men enact on children, especially little boys, goes way underreported. This is a huge problem we know about. And so the number doesn't matter. I agree. Any number more than one is too many. And that's not what CNN was reporting on. CNN was reporting on this subculture of men who are specifically into the idea of raping their wives or their committed partners while they're asleep, which again is like wrong. Rape is bad, right? I told you when I started recording this with the trigger warning that like there's no hot take at the end of this, right? Rape is bad. I don't think that should be a profound take. Um what the 62 million thing again, that where that number sort of came from, that was the amount of visitors to a specific porn site that doesn't just have just a porn site, right? And again, like if that number sounds alarming, this is where the statistics and the data matters. Talking about pornography gets really tricky because you will always have religious extremists who want to push their anti-porn, anti-lust, modesty laws that are bad for human beings through these types of things. So I always want to like caveat this to say sexual attraction is normal. It's part of human development. Humans exist on a spectrum around how they experience that and what they experience with it. It has nothing to do with engaging in sexual acts. I don't want to say it has nothing to do. But again, what happens in our head, whether it's fantasy, whether it's desire. I was raised in a purity culture. So again, lust always meant a bad thing, but I don't think it is. But I don't use that word very often because of the negative connotation. Sexual desire is a normal, healthy thing that most people experience with some regularity once they hit puberty, sometimes even before, right? Um, I don't mean to exclude or disparage the ace community, but again, it's I think a misconception that ace people never have any sexual desire or thoughts. It's just not with any consistency in their life. Again, even in that community, there's still a spectrum because sexuality for all humans exists on a spectrum and it is incredibly wide and incredibly diverse. So I'm not opposed to pornography existing. It's cavemen used to draw sexy pictures on the walls in the caves, right? Like this is something that has always been around and always existed because human desire, sexual desire is normal, natural part of human development. So I'm not somebody who's like anti-porn, and I always get nervous talking about these things that like it'll get clipped, or some people will be like, see, porn's bad. Rape is bad. Non-consensual sexual activity is bad. Abuses of power are bad. Pornography existing is not inherently bad. If pornography is engaging in those coercive practices, in non-consensual activity, then yes, that's bad. So the 62 million thing is like to a specific site. I'm not going to name it. I don't know, for covering myself. I swear all the time on here. I don't know that matters. You can read the CNN article if it wants. It's not Pornhub, right? I will name that one because I think most people know about that. Like 4 billion users a month, not users, 4 billion clicks a month with an average length of visit between 10 and 15 minutes. Again, like this data is just out there, right? And that would be like saying, so what CNN wasn't saying was 62 million visitors a month to an online website that is a rape academy. That's not what is in the report at all. And I think that's what got taken and run with online and turned into even shorter posts, which again, were just inaccurate. There were 62 million users to visits to this one pornographic website. And on that one pornographic website, some of these men in this community who wanted to rape their wives while they were asleep were posting their videos, right? And so again, I mean, as somebody who's kink positive, as somebody who's pleasure positive, like consensual non-consent is a thing. It's something that needs to have good boundaries, be built on trust and mutual respect. It's a kink that both genders experience and can have space to play in, enjoy other people in, and find community in. But again, like it is something that like can also go poorly, especially when we're introducing drugs into it. So it's something that requires a lot of boundaries, requires a lot of communication to make sure that it is consensual, a lot of safety parameters. This is not what those men were engaging in. These men were engaging in non-consensual sexual activity, which is rape, sexual assault, right? And there's a whole subset of this violence in relationships that we in the mental health community talk about as intimate partner violence. There's data on it, there's statistics on it. Again, growing up in purity culture, growing up fundamentalist religious, like I wasn't taught anything about consent. Zero passages in the Bible are about consent. Lots about how much you can beat your slave before it's a sin, but none about consent. And again, so like working with religious trauma, I have a bunch of people who I see where there have been instances of intimate partner violence and they didn't know that's what they were doing. And like that's yucky, right? And I'm not saying those people are yucky. I'm saying the idea that somebody could be in a committed relationship and not realize what they're engaging in is harmful because they've been taught that their bodies belong to their spouses and that any and all sex outside of marriage is wrong and any and all sex inside of a marriage is correct and God pleasing fucks people up of all genders across all the spectrums. Like purity culture is rape culture is a thing for anybody who studies this type of thing. So again, I see this type of thing often. Intimate partner violence is something that is a deal breaker for a lot of people, and rightfully so, and is something that people want to work through and understand, that people want to heal from. And so again, there is no one way to do this other than like it can't keep going on because it's harmful. But again, this is a thing that we as therapists are aware of. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, so this is something that I've been trained in and have to deal with. Um, it's never like fun. But again, to help people grow and heal and get to a place of healthy sexuality is awesome and a regular part of my work, even when there hasn't been intimate partner violence, right? So there wasn't a religious component in the CNN story, although the CNN story is from like CNN Europe, and most of the um, cases cited were in some of the European countries. So this wasn't an America specific story, clarification. But I saw the 62 million number floating around online, and I wasn't going to do an episode about it because it was like my instant thought was that's a weird number. That's a weirdly specific number. But I didn't read the thing. I didn't have a reaction of like it was just weirdly specific in that like on the one hand it seems too low for the amount of violence done to women. On the other hand, it seems too high for a website that was again being quoted on the internet as being a rape academy, which again, that's not what the CNN article says. There is a subset of pornography on this site in the tens of thousands. Again, I'm not diminishing the number. I'm not defending that it exists. This is the one porn site that they cited that hadn't taken the videos down. And then when they started doing their reporting, the videos were removed and cited as breaking the terms of service of the website that was hosting them. But again, like this is an issue. Pornhub had to deal with this a few years ago where they had to get rid of pretty much all of their content and really shift their whole business model to be much more creator centric, it's not creator owned per se, but having a lot more creators putting their stuff up instead of random people putting up stuff that they don't have access to or certainly don't own the copyright to. But the model shifted from what it used to be, which is good, and that was done in a reaction to way too much child sexual abuse material being available, not even on like the dark web or the dark deep recesses corners of the internet, but on like mainstream porn sites. So that was a good thing. And again, this porn site was not one of those that had gone through that process, and so that came out in the reporting. But again, tens of thousands of videos here is again way too many. And and not all of them were like explicitly videos of sexual assault. because again, porn and kink and shameful communities, I don't want to say shameful, communities that are outside of the norm always find spaces on the internet, right? And they talk to each other and they post things. And so the CNN reporting, and I'm not defending it, like, don't rape people. Again, this was horrific. The CNN reporting also got into a Telegram chat group of these men. Again, there weren't 62 million of them. There weren't tens of thousands of them. This was a smaller group. Telegram sucks. It's what a ton of neo-Nazis use, a lot of hate groups use, a lot of violent extremists are using. Again, this group of men who wanted to rape their wives was using. So like a company that claims to be about free speech and actually just lets people commit crimes on their platform and talk about those crimes pretty freely. But like, again, so when I saw the 62 million number, I was like, that's a weird number, not like dismissing it out of hand or not having an issue with it, just being like, I wonder what that's actually about. But I didn't read the reporting and I didn't click on it because it's like, right, obviously men enact violence against women. Our president is in the Epstein files over 30,000 times. There's what, 6 million, 3 million documents that haven't been released, probably because he's in them or other powerful people are in them. And he's the president. The Pope, who people are like, woo, the Pope's fighting Donald Trump, so now we like the Pope, spent his entire career before becoming Pope defending sexually abusing priests. He was a pedophile protector. He still is a pedophile protector. He's not a good person. The Pontiff, one of the holiest men alive, pedophile protector. So again, an article that comes out and says men abuse women at a shocking rate. Yeah. Duh. And why I didn't click on the article is not because like, oh, that's not news to me, but because like it would be upsetting to read the article that focuses on this statistic or this thing and doesn't talk about the wider culture of how do such powerful rapists maintain their power. Again, what came out of Me Too, what came out of some of these reactions. Well, like Donald Trump getting elected again. First of all, again, men reacted poorly to that, and not just men, because again, Donald Trump won white women as a voting bloc because Christians voted for him, because Christians protect abusers as well. That's part of the religious hierarchy. These institutions will defend power before they will defend victims all of the time. And so, and again, the CNN article didn't do that. Again, it was good reporting. It was something that needed to be reported. There were consequences because of the reporting, and men who were abusing their partners went to jail, which is good. This porn site took down those specific videos and that specific sort of corner of, I'm going to call it a kink, but again, like it's not an okay. I don't want to say it's not an okay kink. It's not kink as we who work in this field and work with things like kink is inherently consensual, right? Engaging in a kink with a partner who shares that kink is consensual act. None of this is defensible because none of this was consensual. Sorry, I have I think my allergies are kicking off. I don't know if I look weepy, but the watery eyes and itchy eyes and sore throat, something in the Midwest bloomed recently that's bugging me. So again, none of this was consensual. This was a sexual assault. This was intimate partner violence. This was rape. We can use all of those words correctly and accurately for those things. Now, I said I wasn't going to do an episode on this. What changed? Well, a fairly famous therapist on social media came out with a take that wasn't good. Therapy Jeff is pretty big on TikTok. I assume he's big on Instagram. I'm not on TikTok and I don't think I follow him on Instagram. I'm whatever. We'll get into it. He basically posted for men who have fantasies of a sexually violent nature, where are they supposed to go? What hotline do they call? How do they get help? And those hotlines exist. So again, his take was wrong in the sense of like, oh, this wouldn't happen if we had resources. There are resources available. When we talk about kink and when we look at some of these things, there are people who have intrusive thoughts and struggle with them and would never act on them. There are people who have intrusive thoughts and struggle with them and might act on them. There are people who want to do bad things for bad reasons and are not interested in changing. And so again, you sort of have to be able to hold this nuance in your head and understand that there are different types of people who might be having these thoughts. That humans are not monolithic, and it is not one or the other. There is no black and white thinking, especially when it comes to something as complex as sexuality. For dynamics of power and power play and kinks related to power, super common, right? For all genders, for all sexualities, power play is a thing that is interesting to some people across the broad spectrum, right? Because it's something that can be really engaging. It's something that we experience, and exploring it and playing with it through kink is a different way to experience it and explore it. Some of it is about giving up control. Some of it is about experiencing control when you normally don't. There's lots of ways to do this that, again, are healthy and consensual. It's a common kink, right? From basic handcuffs you buy off of, Amazon that are cheaply made and whatever, and fuzzy pink cuffs, to hardcore BDSM, to, dominant slave relations, to all these other things. Broad spectrum of what that looks like. Not everybody who's interested in power play is interested in a dominant slave relationship, right? People who are interested in being overpowered or taken advantage of are not pro rape. Again, like, there's a broad spectrum here, and we have to understand that kink and kink play is based first and foremost on consent. Finding partners who are enthusiastically consenting to these things is an important first step. Not everybody fits in that category, right? Some people have kinks that really bother them, that they're uncomfortable with, that are intrusive thoughts or based on their own history or whatever. And the fact that these thoughts come up and these thoughts potentially are arousing to them are concerning. They don't like it. They're uncomfortable with it. And that's great. And it's not great for them, but it's great that they struggle with it and seek help, right? And these people will come to therapy because this thing is bothersome to them and they want help in learning how to manage it, work through it, understand it, etc. Love that, right? Love that people who want help can seek out help. And again, people who might have some of these fantasies or might have some of these experience some of these things as intrusive thoughts, there are resources and hotlines available. That's why Therapy Jeff's take was so bad, because it was like, oh, you didn't even look before you posted this. And again, this is an uncomfortable thing that I think the general population doesn't have to deal with very much. Every case of incest I've ever worked with, every case I've worked with of abuse in 17 years of doing therapy, this is anecdotal evidence. This is not 100% true across the board everywhere. But in my career, everybody I've worked with who has physically or sexually abused another human has been a victim of abuse themselves. And that sucks. Right? How do you hold space for, I believe, victims and want to help them, and then those victims perpetrate the very harm that was done to them? And it's super common. It's not, again, not all abusers are victims themselves. That has been my experience, my career, but that is anecdotal. That's not true across the board. And not everybody who is abused will go on to do abuse, which is why abuse is so heinous and why that is not something that we're excusing or making a rationale for why it's okay. Lots of people are abused and choose to not do that, obviously. And so, but that nuance often isn't there. Again, we want to think of perpetrators and victims as two separate categories, and the overlap between those two things, that somebody who's a perpetrator is also a victim themselves, makes us uncomfortable because it's so complex. There's no easy answer, and our brain likes to have easy answers. And so I can understand as a therapist saying, hey, there's nuance here, but that's not really what Therapy Jeff said. And what he was suggesting for nuance, again, exists already. And so he really wasn't saying anything useful. And again, he did not say rape is bad. He didn't say intimate partner violence is an epidemic that's being not talked about enough. There was no correction of hey, misogyny in all its forms is bad and needs to be actively worked on to eradicate it. Um, and so again, I will maintain like what he said was bad. It was factually inaccurate, or at least factually misleading. And he didn't clarify that like there's no excuse for these things. There's never an excuse for this behavior. People don't act out because of a lack of resources. Um, do we need more resources? Yes, for everything in mental health. Absolutely, 100%. Um, and that's not why this is going on. It doesn't make it okay because there are people who have these fantasies, who have these desires to exert power over people in a violent and harmful way, and that's what they want, right? They don't want to change it. They don't struggle with it. This is CEOs who are ravaging the environment. This is big bankers and also CEOs who are stealing money from people. This is the Epstein pedophile class. This is serial killers. This is rapists. This is people who, for whatever reason, and there are various reasons and even more theories on what other reasons could be, have no qualms about harming other people. And again, in a colonial society where power is worshipped and power is protected, this keeps happening because there isn't actual accountability, right? When I can highlight a ton of people in power, president, pope, owners of major social media, corporations, CEOs, high power bankers, Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, P. Diddy. Again, like the list goes on and 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 on. And again, it's power, right? It's not men. It is men specifically, and to a statistically significant degree. But it's, Katy Perry recently, right? It's Lizzo. It's other people who, when there is power and power is protected and with no accountability, there will be abuse. It's the church, it's capitalism, anything that comes from a colonial mindset that I can exert power over this to make this thing mine creates lots and lots and lots of opportunities for abuse. Statistically speaking, again, men are perpetrating this abuse more often than not. Again, I don't think that's a biological gender thing. I think that is a social norming thing that under colonialism and in the modern age of colonialism from, 300 AD on, um, the is in the common era, colonialism has been patriarchal. And so again, it is men engaging in the colonial process of something that does not belong to me through force. I will make it mine. Um, is why I think that discrepancy exists. Um, but again, that's looking through a historical lens and saying, what is this thing actually about? One of the other hot takes, and one of the other things I keep seeing is like, this is a men's problem, and this is men's problem to fix. And certainly, I understand the sentiment. Um, Men in our position of privilege, under capitalism, under colonialism, under a patriarchal system, men need to call out and enforce um, better social norms for other men. It's not okay to take advantage of somebody who's drunk. It's not okay to take advantage of someone who is less powerful than you, whether that is somebody of a different gender, whether that is a child, whether that is a person of different ability, whether that's an old person, whatever it is. Like, again, anytime that power is exerted violently and non-consensually needs to be a problem. It is a problem, and we need to treat it as such. And we don't high five people or laugh at their awkward jokes or make it okay. We call them out and make them feel uncomfortable to the point of shunning them, because that cannot exist in a functional society. The fact that, again, our society is built around it is what will make our society eventually crumble, and always has been a failing experiment, because you cannot build a society that has any degree of sustainability long term, again, in the millions of years range, not in the short lifespans of humans, because obviously the colonial experiment that has been the United States of America is going on. But again, in the historical sense of civilizations, very short run to be falling apart already. So yeah, I understand that men need to enforce and change the culture, but it needs to be a collective, right? And I'm not putting the responsibility on those people who are not in power. This isn't me saying it's not men's responsibility. I'm saying men can't be the solution, because giving men uh putting men in a role of power is part of the problem, right? So it needs to be men who enforce changing the social norm, but then it needs to be a collective and a collaborative stepping into that place. I'm going to say that power vacuum, and that's such a like Western sort of mindset. We need something better to take its place. It's not better men being in charge, right? And again, I don't think that's what people are saying when they're saying men need to be better. Again, I think people are implying there needs to be a better system at the end of this all, but I do think it's potentially intellectually lazy, potentially intellectually dishonest to just end our talking points there. And this gets back to why I don't follow some of these people online, and why I'm skeptical to about therapists. I'm skeptical about people with platforms in general in these spaces. I'm doing a 30-minute video right now where 31 minutes. I can watch my timer count up as I ramble on. Um, I don't like the short form media. I've never been on TikTok. Um, I do some YouTube shorts, but like I never make a short independent of a larger film. Everything is clipped to promote my larger videos. And in trying to do Instagram Reels and trying to get into some of this stuff as a small business owner who needs to promote their business, which sucks and is like dystopian in its own way, the shortest I could get some things down was like 2.5 minutes, which I think TikTok and I think Instagram Reels. I'm not on Facebook. I don't know what Facebook is doing. I would assume similar to whatever Instagram is doing, right? They're both meta companies. Uh, they've expanded how long you can have videos and do some of those things. But again, as a therapist, like the amount of nuance it requires for me to talk about things um, is extensive. I can't do a 90-second video about trauma. I can't do justice to a topic like attachment theory or good communication, whether it's a overview of a topic or it's a skill set or a technique that I recommend. I teach all of my couples how to use timeouts. And again, it's one of going to be the first things I posted in short form, and I couldn't get it short enough to post it in a way where I was like, well, this is what I'm actually trying to say. And so I don't like something that's 140 character limit. There's no nuance there. I don't like things that are 90-second clips. There's no nuance there. To think that we can talk effectively about the human experience in that short amount of time is preposterous. And again, that's part of where these conversations fall flat, is like, if you've ever been in my office, which why would you have been? Although sometimes I know my clients are listening. Hey. Um, one of the books that sits on my coffee table all the time. I have a book that I rotate around, and then I have some coffee table books that stay on my shelf, and one on my coffee table. One of the reasons this book stays is because I have multiple copies of it. But The Medium is the Massage by Marshall McLuhan, which is from the 1960s, and it's a really good read, and I think that's worthwhile even now today. Some of it's just fun and interesting to hear how people in the 60s thought technology would advance, but some of it was spot on and very accurate to problems we were going to have if our media literacy wasn't better, because just how we engage with topics shapes what our brain does with them, right? The medium, the form in which we're engaging, whether it's newspaper, a book, short form video, a long short form video, in-person conversation, all of these things elicit different responses in our brain. And so there's shaping and shading of content, not of content, of meaning making of the content we're consuming in that way. Even the idea that it is made to be consumed shapes how we interact with it. And so, I think when researchers are looking at like autism, something that's been studied already, the autism information on TikTok is about 80% inaccurate, which is a very high number to be inaccurate. Because again, there's so much nuance. It's really hard to talk about something like this that exists on a spectrum that is different for different people, that lacks long-term good longitudinal studies on with a degree of confidence. There are some therapists, psychologists, researchers on social media who I like, who I think do a good job of doing longer videos that distill complex topics into something that can be understood. But even with those content creators, they get clipped. News people take those things. Other content creators take those things and shrink them down even more to be less than accurate. And I don't think it's always intentional, but again, I think, like, to understand, you're operating under tech fascism to be clipping things and posting it on TikTok or Instagram reels, right? Like, these are not neutral, even if we're trying to use them for good purposes. And like, I'm on YouTube, right? I'm podcasting. I don't know what company owns Buzzsprout, which is where I host my podcast. And, it's on Apple Music, and I don't love Apple as a company. I've boycotted them for forever. For petty personal reasons, not because I'm on my high horse here. For refusing to fix my OG first generation iPod when it broke. Again, like, there's not a different option, right? And what we have seen in the rise of the internet and in sort of industry disrupting things like Uber, like streaming, all they've done is made a thing that was already monopolistic worse and then monopolized it again. So I'm deeply skeptical of this stuff, but certainly, like, I feel better, obviously, because I'm doing long form conversations with other humans. That's what generally, when I'm interviewing guests for the podcast, is all about. That's what the premise of the podcast was like, to take care of your mental health is normal and expected for everyone, even the professionals. And this long form video allows me to have nuance. And I try not to watch my videos back, because honestly, when I listen to myself, first of all, I don't like my recorded voice. That's normal. That there's a psychological condition. We don't love it. It's not like a diagnosable, just like, it's a thing that we've researched and said, like, yes, most humans do not like hearing their recorded voice because it's not how we hear ourselves in our head. And it creates some dissonance. But also, whenever I listen to myself, or somebody clip something or play something I said or cite something I said, like, there's always more nuance to it, right? There's not a thing I've put on the internet that I wouldn't add an addendum to, or update, or shift, or change. It's part of why recording things for posterity's sake is really hard. I try and put out content that I'm happy with. I try and put up things that are backed by research, that are, deeply informed by my experience as a therapist, deeply informed by other people's lives. I try and platform other people who are coming from other experiences and other perspectives on things, not in that, like, fake sort of talk is Jericho or Joe Rogan way, where they're just putting on people that they agree with and then they're pretending to be free speech people. I'm finding and vetting guests that I want to platform, right? It's not the Wild West over here. I'm making sure people are not going to espouse things that are harmful. Because again, I think that's the responsibility that comes along with having a platform. As a small podcast, small YouTube channel. But again, as a licensed therapist who has a lot of privilege and a lot of quote unquote power, is put into a position of power, whether I want to be or not. That's the thing that we have to be aware of. And I think that's where Therapy Jeff really fell flat. And then people went and found other posts of his that aren't great. One of them was about, like, his preferences for hand jobs. He got graphic. And again, there's a part of me that's like, I don't think that's bad. Again, I think seeking that stuff out and posting it and saying, see, this guy's problematic, is, again, forcing a narrative that may or may not be there. A lot of people were up in arms about, like, well, his clients will see that and how are they supposed to feel? Well, like, he's a TikTok therapist. He doesn't have a full client caseload. He probably only sees a handful of people. I saw someone, I don't know how they had this information or how credible it is, say he only has 5 actual clients. Everything he does, all the money he makes, is through social media. And again, that's not necessarily who I think people should listen to. I generally send people YouTube videos by Katie Morton. I think she does a good job. I'm biased because she's an LMFT, and I think LMFTs do this better than other professionals because I think thinking systemically is how we have to approach the world. And if it ever comes out that she's bad or whatever, that sucks. I have The Body Keeps the Score on my bookshelf, not because I think Bessel van der Kolk is awesome. He's a twat and an asshole and not a good person to work with. And that's the book that shifted and changed how we talk about trauma and understand trauma. It's not the only book that was out. But again, I think there's a lot in that book that I still cite for people so that if they have no framework for trauma, here's a good holistic overview. I should update that again as I say it out loud. Again, this is something where it's like, yeah, 2 months from now, I'll probably have a different book because I said it out loud. And I'm like, yeah, I don't actually like that when I actually sit with it. My bookshelf is ever rotating. I don't remember where I was going with that. So anyway, I'm not somebody who's like puts people on a pedestal. I maintain that everybody is awesome in a special and unique and unpredictable or unexpected way. And everybody's a piece of shit. Human beings suck and simultaneously, truthfully, are awesome. And the question becomes, what do we do with that as opposed to, can we find the perfect person? No, they don't exist. Not in a religious, sinful sort of way, just in a like, we're messy. We're not finished products. Nobody is. And anyone who claims to be is lying to you. Right? My podcast is specifically about how I am in therapy and other professionals also need to be because everybody needs help. Nobody's a finished product. Nobody gets it right all of the time, always. That's preposterous. Does that mean that I recommend following Therapy Jeff? No, if you want to unfollow him, do that. I didn't know he was the person who started Therapy Den. I also didn't know Therapy Den had been sold. All of this doesn't surprise me because Therapy Den does suck compared to what it was when it first started. So I've been looking to get off of it anyway. But again, I got off Psychology Today a while ago because they're a garbage company and I don't want to give them money. Like at some point, I'm a small business owner who has to advertise, and there aren't a ton of great options out there because the other options that might be more ethically aligned can't compete because the internet is owned by tech fascists and they promote bad people. That's where we're going to end today. Also, I'm aware that the title of this episode can read "Not All the Rapists," and it is hashtag not all therapists. I've seen Arrested Development, obviously. If you're like, why is that obvious? Then I perhaps think you haven't seen Arrested Development. I've also seen Maria Bamford. I'm pretty sure that's a Maria Bamford joke before it became a running gag about Tobias Funke on Arrested Development. But I just watched a Maria Bamford documentary, Paralyzed by Hope. Strong recommend. Saw it at Milwaukee Film Fest. Also a strong recommend. Go support your local cinema. And so, yeah. Haha. Gotta have some light humor. That's in the title. The rest of the episode, bit of a downer. And again, I don't want to talk about, it's not that I don't want to talk about this stuff. I'm not avoiding talking about these things. It's stuff I talk about regularly. I would love to be doing community-based Q&A every episode and not report on the news and terrible people doing terrible things. I'm on Team Collapse, right? Waiting for the better thing. Trying to actively participate in creating space for the better thing. So, go engage with good, healthy community. Go find that. If it's not in your area, start it, create it, make it. Fuck misogynistic men. Fuck abusers. Let's get them out of here. We can't build with them. They're destructive, not builders. And yeah, my normal sign off, take care of yourself, take care of somebody else. And I mean that. Go do that today. Also, fuck allergies. Hopefully this doesn't sound too nasally. All right, I'm out of here, y'all. Take care. We'll be back next week with another new episode. Peace.